Today I'm creating a Debian template on Proxmox. Once again, I'm going to fix some issues I had on my old template, and I'm going to create some new issues with a cloud image template. If you're interested in seeing how I do this, come check it out. The first way I'm going to create a template for Debian is with an installation ISO from the Debian website. In order to get that installation ISO, I'm on the debian.org website, and they've got a download link just on the front page. I'm just going to copy the link address. You probably can't see that on the recording, but I right-clicked it, copied link address, and then I'll switch back over to my Proxmox, and I'll open up the home lab, go to the local storage, and under ISO files I will download from URL. And I'm just going to paste that URL that I copied. So we'll query it just to make sure I got the right link, and you can see it sees the ISO file. So I'm going to download that, and now with that downloaded, I'm ready to create a virtual machine that I'm going to use as my template. So I'm just going to create VM. I'm going to put this as 902 because this is going to be my third Debian template, but I'm just going to call this one Debian template. I'll click next, and this is where that ISO file will come in. We'll look for the ISO file in storage, and it's right there. Click next. I'm just going to leave this as a BIOS system. I'm going to click QEMU guest agent because I want that running. And we'll go on to disks. 32 gigabytes is a reasonable size. I'm going to give this access to all 4 cores. So I'm giving this virtual machine 4 cores, and that's all that this little computer has. So I will be over provisioning every virtual machine that I use. Virtual machines each think that they've got 4 cores, but there's only 4 cores total. Proxmox does a really good job of managing those tasks in the background. I'm only giving 4 gigabytes of RAM to this virtual machine since my host only has 16 gigs. If you over provision your RAM, it can be okay, but if all of your virtual machines are calling to use the RAM at the same time, it can cause issues with crashing. So be careful with how much memory you put. And I'm going to leave this on the VMBR0 bridge. And I'm going to start this after it's created. I'm going to use the graphical installer for this. So select your language. I'm English. I am Canadian. I use American English. So I'll just call this one Debian template again. Oops, if I can type. Don't need a domain name. You do need a root password, so I'm just going to call this one password because it's only temporary. I'll give a temp account here. Select your time zone, and I'm going to do a manual partition. Select my disk. I'm going to say yes, create an empty partition table. We're going to grab this free space and continue. Create a new partition. I'll use all of the disk space as a primary partition. And I'm done setting up the partitions. Okay, so here we're getting a warning that's saying that you don't have any swap space. And we don't really need swap space, so I'm just going to leave it as is and we'll carry on. Write changes to the disk? Yes. Now we're being asked if we have any additional media that we need to install. No, we don't. Now on this screen it's asking us to configure the package manager. I just leave this on the default because it's always worked out well for me. And then I'll just use the recommended Debian archive mirror. I don't have a proxy. Now on this screen they're asking us if we want to participate in the package usage survey. This will just tell Debian what kind of packages have been installed, so it kind of lets them know which ones are the most important. I'm going to say yes on this for sure, just to support the folks over at Debian, especially since no cache changed hands for me to be able to use this program. So this data should help the people over at Debian to know which packages they should be trying to keep up to date. Alright, so I don't want a desktop environment at all on mine, so I'm going to uncheck these two boxes, but I do want an SSH server so I can connect to it remotely, so I will install that right now. Now we're being asked if we want to load the grub bootloader. I definitely do. We'll select the disk, and that'll install grub. And with that, Debian 12 is installed on my virtual machine. If I click continue, we'll reboot. And then I can finish some changes that I want to make and then create my template. So my virtual machine is booted up. I'm just going to log in as root. And there's a few things I want to do. That temp user that I created, I want to get rid of that. So I'm going to run userdel-r. And I called them temp. So no temp mail spool. Let's list my home directory. We got rid of that. I also want to install a few packages. So apt update. All right, we're up to date. Apt install. Now I want to install Vim Nox because that's my preferred text editor. I want to install cloud-init. And then cloud-init ramfs grow root. This will allow us to dynamically change the size of our disks if we need to. And I want to install curl because I've been bit by that a few times in the past. Alright, with those packages installed, I'm ready to create a swap file, and to do that I'm going to use the dd command. So I'm going to use dd with the input file of dev0, an output file of, I'm going to just call this one swap file again. It's going to have a block size of 1 megabyte and a count of 2048, so that's 2 gigabytes. Right on. So we've created a swap file. Now I need to give it the correct permissions. So I'm going to use chmod 600 with that swap file. Now I need to make swap of that swap file. So it says that we've got that swap file created. And lastly, I want to append the fstab file so that it will automatically load up that swap file on boot. So I'm just going to use an echo command for that. And that's going to be swap file with option of none, swap sw00. And I want to append the etc fstab file. Now just to make sure that worked, I'm going to cat out that file just to make sure that it was added, and you can see on the bottom it was. Now if you're somebody who followed one of my previous videos and you were getting the same IP address for your virtual machines every time you load it up, this is the fix. And I'm sorry I skipped this in the last tutorial, but I didn't have an issue with it in my home lab, so I didn't think it was going to be an issue. In order to fix that, we need to clear the contents of the etc machine ID file. And I'm just going to use Vim for that. Etsy machine ID. I'm going to DD that to delete it. I will write and quit. I had to add an exclamation mark to that because this is a read-only file. But now if I cat out that file, there's nothing in it. There is one other file that we have to deal with, however. If I cat out the contents of var lib dbus machine ID, that has the same contents in it that I just deleted from the Etsy machine ID file. If we leave that one alone, it will actually repopulate the machine ID from this file. So I need to get rid of that, and I'm going to do that with an rm command. This command, rm var lib dbus machine ID, is going to remove that file. Then we'll create a symbolic link from Etsy machine ID, and we will put it into var lib dbus machine ID. Now if I cat out those contents, there should be nothing there. Perfect. Another thing that I should have done in my last video was to clear the SSH host files. This won't really cause any issues connecting to your virtual machines, but it does mean they're all using the exact same keys. Any SSH traffic that's on your local network should be decryptable from all of your virtual machines. That's less than secure practice, so this time I'm going to fix that. So in order to fix that, I'm going to rm anything on the Etsy SSH, and I'm going to give it a fuzzy key to get rid of them all. Now all the keys are gone. When you clone this template, it's going to regenerate a new machine ID, and you shouldn't have any issues with the same IP coming up again, and your virtual machines will be more secure. Now the last thing I want to do before I shut this virtual machine down is I want to change the Etsy shadow file. Now in here you can see they've got all the users on the system, and root is right at the top. I want to delete everything between these two colons because that is the hashed password for this user. So I'm just going to delete all of that, and I want to replace it with a exclamation point and an asterisk. So by doing this, I've deleted the root password, which means nobody can log in directly as root anymore. This is going to effectively disable the root user on here, but not disable root privileges in general. At this point, this template will not have any users on it, so you're going to need a cloud-init drive in order to add a user when you're cloning it. And to get out of here, I need to hit escape to get out of insert mode, and then I will write and quit. Oh, I almost forgot. There's one more thing I'd like to change, and that is the SSH daemon settings. In here, I'd like to disable the root account. So right here where it says permit root login, I'm just going to change this to no. And I'd like to disable password login as well. Oh, I went right past it. And this one, we're going to change that to no as well. So with those changes made, I won't be able to access SSH without an SSH key installed. I won't be able to access as the root user, and that's how I want this template to be. So I'm going to shut down the system. Now with my virtual machine set up the way I want, I got to go to the hardware settings and add a cloud-init drive right there. I'm going to leave it as an IDE device. Storage will be under local VM and add. Now for me, I'd like to change these settings before I create a template. I'm going to have it create the Hardwood Home Lab user. I will edit the password. I'm going to add an SSH key. I've just copied my public SSH key. I want it to upgrade packages when it's being started up. And the IP config, I want that to be DHCP. Okay. With that, my template is ready to go. So I'm going to convert to template. Yes. And now we're ready to use it. So in my last Debian template video, I got called out by the user HanMoP. And they said, this is not the way to create a template. And so I asked, what would you do differently? This user reached out to me and sent me a link to a website that has directions on how to install a cloud image from Debian. They also covered the install of a couple other distributions, but in this video I'm just going to go over Debian since that's my preferred flavor of choice. I'm actually going to leave a link to the website that HanMoP sent to me in the description below because they're very good instructions, but I'm going to go over it on here just the same. Now the first step is you want to create a virtual machine, and with this I'm going to give it an ID of 903, and I'm going to call this one Debian Cloud Image. I'm not going to use any install media for this one, and I want the QEMU agent enabled. I'll just leave it as a BIOS, but you can use UEFI if you want. Now I'm going to delete the disk because we're going to import this from the cloud image. Once again, I'll go with 4 cores. Really, you should have the minimal amount of memory that you're going to possibly use on this virtual machine set in here. I'm going with 4 gigs. I could probably easily go with 1, but realistically I'll want 4 for anything that I'm going to be spinning up. And I'm going to leave it on the default bridge since that's the only device I have on this system. And I will finish that. From here, I'm going to have to download the cloud image. And to find that, I went to cloud.debian.org. And you can see I went for the latest bookworm version. You want to find the QCal file for the architecture that you're using. They do have ARM64 on here. There's also Azure images, EC2 images. I'm just going to use the generic one, and that's this file right here. You probably can't see this, but I'm copying the link address. And I'm going to take that back to Proxmox, and we'll go to the shell. To download that file, I'm going to use wget and just paste that link that I just copied. And that's going to download that image to the current directory. Now with that image downloaded, there's a few commands I want to run before it's ready to be used inside my template. The first thing I want to do is resize that image. Right now there's no free space on it, so if I were to import this into my virtual machine and boot off of it, when it's booting up and tries to update the system, it has no space for that. So you may have problems with new users updating, but you definitely won't be able to update any of your packages. So I'm going to increase the size of the image with command QEMU image, resize, and then we'll put in that file name, which is Debian. I can just tab that out, and then we enter in the size of the file you want. So I'm going to give it 20 gigs. So by running this command, it's going to import this image file that we've just resized into the local LVM pool and attach it to this virtual machine. With that cloud image imported, we're ready to use it. But for some reason with these cloud images, we need to set a display socket on the virtual machine. And to do that, we run the command qmset. We give it the VM ID, which once again is 903. And we set serial 0 to socket and VGA to serial 0. Now that should be all we need to run on the command line for Proxmox. The rest we'll do through the GUI. So I'm going to select that virtual machine we created. I'm going to go to hardware, and you can see the disk is here, but it shows it as unused. So we'll just double click on here and click add. Now you can see it's been added to the virtual machine for use. And while I'm in here, I also want to add a cloud-init drive. That'll also go on the local LVM. And we'll want to edit the settings in here. So I'm going to add my user, add a password, and I want to add my SSH key. I'm just going to go copy that quick, paste that in there. Whoops, I forgot to change the network config on here. So I'm going to edit this, change it to DHCP. Okay, and then lastly, before we can boot from that drive, we have to set it in the boot options. So I will enable it. I'm just going to drag this to the top. Okay. Now this is ready to be used as a template. If I were to create a template image from this, I could right click and convert to template. But I want to install a few things first. So I'm going to boot this image up. Okay, so it looks like we're still booting, but I think we missed the login screen here. So I'm going to try logging in. Yeah. And our image is up. With this thing booted up, I'm going to install some packages that I want on here, primarily the QEMU guest agent. So I'm going to run sudo apt update, and then sudo apt install QEMU guest agent. And also because I like Vim, I'll install that one. Now that I've got the packages that I want installed on my cloud image, I'm ready to set this up as a template, but I'm going to have to clean a few things first. Because this cloud image has booted, I'm going to have to clear the machine ID again. So I'm going to try the method that the website suggested. I'm going to switch to the root user. I'm going to run cat dev null to the etc machine ID. Now I just want to check that the machine ID is for sure empty, and it is. And I want to just see if that var lib dbus is also cleared. And it should be, since this is already a link to the etc one. Now, since cloud-init has already run on this machine, it has regenerated our SSH keys, so I'm going to have to clear those again. So if I cd into etc ssh, you can see all the keys that have already been configured. I want to get rid of all of those. Now with those clear, everything on this disk is ready to be reused. We just need to tell cloud-init that it has to run its initial install again. And to do that, we run cloud-init clean. I can now shut down this virtual machine and turn it into a template. To templateify this virtual machine, I just right-click, convert to template. Alright, so now I've created two templates. One off of an install from an ISO file and the other from a cloud image. Now, which one do I prefer? I'm going to clone both of these templates and let's compare them. So we'll start with the ISO. I'm going to clone. I'll give this a VM ID of 500 and we'll call this one ISO clone. We'll do a full clone. And then I'll grab the cloud image one. We'll give that a VM ID of 501. Cloud clone. And we'll do a full clone on that. Alright, so I'm going to change my cloud-init on here just to illustrate if I wanted a different user on here. I'm going to call this one, we'll say user 1. And on this, same thing. Cloud-init. We'll edit this to user 1. I'm going to start with a cloud clone. Let's fire up this VM. Alright, so cloud clone login is working. I'm going to log in as user 1. And it's good. You can see the host name changed to the VM name, which is cloud clone, and user 1 was created by a cloud-init. But if I list the home directory, I've still got my Hardwood Home Lab user in there from when I went in and installed the packages that I want. It's really not that huge of a deal. It's just if you don't want that user on here, you're going to have to remember to delete it. So I'm going to do that now. Oh, and I forgot the -R option. That user's directory is still there, so I'm going to have to remove that. There, now my home directory should be clear. Good. That's one thing from booting into the cloud image and installing the packages that you want. There is a remnant of a user still on the cloud image. Maybe that's just a personal pet peeve, but it's something that I don't particularly care for. If I use lsblk, we do have 3 separate partitions on here. And for some reason there's some artifacting from using that serial socket. Anyway, so we have our root partition, which is what most of this is running on. We have an MBR partition for a BIOS boot, and we also have an EFI boot partition. So what's nice about this cloud image is you can run it on a BIOS system or an UEFI system. So that's the only benefit that I've seen so far from this cloud clone, besides the fact that it was so much faster to implement. One thing about the cloud image is that it's got a few more packages pre-installed on it, so it does have curl. So I'm going to switch over to the ISO clone, and I've also changed the user in the cloud-init on this particular one. We're also using the standard display output on this because it just used Proxmox's standard install. So I called this one user 1, and I'm signed in as user 1. Now if I list my home directory, it's only got user 1 on here. I can't log into root because the root user is still disabled, just the same as the cloud image. On the summary, I also have my IP address grabbed. Let's try on this one. The IP address was grabbed from QEMU guest agent. I'm ready to use this particular VM. Let's see if I can use the cloud version. Starting serial terminal on interface serial 0. I've lost communication with this virtual machine. And this has happened to me pretty consistently. Because QEMU guest agent is still running on here, I can shut it down. And it shows me the shutdown on there. But when I restart it, I get the same message, starting serial terminal. Oh, this time it came back. And of course I'm getting this artifacting on here too. Now if I leave this and come back, I can't get back into the terminal. Now I can still SSH into this virtual machine, so it's not entirely unusable. It's just a pain that I can't access it through the GUI here. Behind the scenes, I tried setting up the Debian cloud image template without setting up that serial display interface, and it wouldn't even boot at all. If anybody has any idea as to why the serial interface is not working as intended on this particular clone, I would love to hear from you down below. In the meantime, I'm going to be sticking with my template from the ISO over here. The way I set it up this time, you shouldn't have any issues with grabbing the same IP every time you clone it. And my SSH should be more secure since it's generating new keys on boot every time you copy it. So that's what I'm going to be using in the future. I hope you found this helpful. My name is Kyle. This is Hardwood Home Lab. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Oh no, I've got inconsistent capitalization. Can I change this one? Okay. Oh, that feels so much better.